The world feels real. The weight of a stone in the hand, the heat of sunlight through closed eyelids, the ache of grief, the thrill of laughter, these are the sensations that root us into the certainty of matter. Yet for thousands of years, and increasingly so in the last decades, a different whisper has echoed through the corridors of mysticism and science alike. What if none of this is quite as solid as it seems? What if life, as we know it, is not the primary reality but a coded reflection, a vast, intelligent illusion, structured for purpose? What if the soul inhabits a hologram, and this world is a simulation woven for its awakening? The ancients hinted at it long before computers gave us metaphors to name it. In Eastern philosophies, the concept of Maya speaks of illusion, not mere deception, but a veil that overlays truth. In Gnostic traditions, the material world is a copy, a shadow cast from a higher realm. In Hermetic texts, as above, so below encodes the symmetry between visible and invisible planes. These weren't primitive beliefs. They were intuitive approximations of a deeper architecture. Then came modern physics, and the veil began to shimmer. In 1997, physicist Juan Meldacena proposed a radical equivalence known as the holographic principle. He theorized that the entire three-dimensional universe we experience might be a projection from two-dimensional data encoded at the boundaries of spacetime. In other words, reality as we know it could be holographic, a dimensional illusion, not unlike the flickering images on a screen that seem to hold depth but do not. Stranger still, theoretical physicist James Gates discovered self-correcting error codes, reminiscent of those used in browser software, embedded in string theory equations. That is, the math describing the fabric of reality contains something eerily like digital code. As if the universe were not only described by information, but made of it. The question became unavoidable: are we inside a simulation? To many, this sounds like science fiction. But to others, it resonates with a more ancient knowledge, that the soul is not merely trapped in flesh, but nested in layers of illusion. That incarnation is not an accident, but a test, an environment designed for learning, for growth, for remembering. If this world is a simulation, then who built it and why? In technological terms, a simulation requires designers, purpose, boundaries. But in spiritual terms, the designer may be the very soul itself. Esoteric traditions have long suggested that we choose our incarnations, that we descend into density in order to awaken from it. The world is a crucible, a mirror, a maze. It throws suffering and joy in equal measure, not to punish or reward, but to catalyze evolution. The soul, vast and immortal, folds itself into a tiny pattern. Takes a name, a body, a story. And then it forgets. That forgetting is essential. Without it, there is no meaning in choice. The simulated reality is persuasive. The stakes feel real. And only through lived experience, love, pain, courage, fear, does the soul begin to remember that it is more than this script, this avatar, this game. But the game is changing. Ascension is a word spoken quietly in hidden corners of spiritual circles, and now more boldly among those sensing a shift. It does not mean death. It does not mean escape. It means integration. The idea is not to abandon the simulation, but to master it, to become lucid within the dream. To align with the truth that the soul is not bound by time. That reality is malleable, that perception shapes experience. In this model, ascension is not a reward after death, but a dimensional elevation in awareness while still embodied. So what, then, is the holographic soul? Imagine a single beam of light passed through a lens to create a hologram. Even a fragment of that hologram still contains the whole image, just at lower resolution. The soul, likewise, projects itself into the world in partial form. Each human life is a shard, a sliver of the full being, encoded with all its potential, but filtered through limitation. This is not imperfection. It is design. In the simulation, experiences are not random. They are programmed, by karma. By intention, by resonance. Encounters, crises, awakenings, these are events written into the code to trigger memory, to spark choice. And slowly, the holographic soul begins to recognize itself in the pattern. Synchronicities increase. Inner voices grow clearer. Dreams bleed into reality. The boundary between the player and the game begins to dissolve, but ascension is not automatic. It is not a software update. It is a process of inward alchemy. The ego, which clings to the illusion of separateness, must soften. The identity that was crafted for this particular lifetime must be seen for what it is, a tool, not a prison. As the soul reclaims awareness, it may begin to operate from higher logic, one not bound by fear or scarcity, but by presence and love. In a simulated reality, death is not deletion. It is logout. The avatar dissolves, but the data, the essence, remains. And if the simulation served its purpose, the soul returns changed, wiser, more whole, more attuned to its original light. There are implications to believing this, and they are not comforting. If life is a simulation, then we are responsible for every line of code we follow or rewrite. If we are holograms, we carry within us the whole. We cannot blame the game for our failures. But neither can we underestimate our power, and what of the world we leave behind when we ascend. Perhaps the simulation continues, for others, for younger souls. For new versions of ourselves. Or perhaps, at some threshold, the entire system shifts frequency. Some say we are approaching that point now, a mass awakening, a planetary ascension, where the simulation itself becomes more flexible, more responsive to thought, more transparent. We see the signs, time accelerating, old systems collapsing, truths long buried erupting into view. Maybe the code is rewriting itself, or maybe we are finally remembering that we wrote it. In the end, to ask if we are living in a simulation is to ask whether reality is fixed or fluid, whether our suffering is meaningless or instructive, whether the soul is real. And in all this, one idea stands like a lighthouse in fog, that we are not trapped. That this world, with all its shadows and pains, is not our prison, but our proving ground, not an illusion to flee, but a mystery to master, not the end, but the beginning of remembering who we truly are.